Traditionally, women were limited to unpaid work, housework and childcare. The Sex Discrimination Act came into force throughout Australia in 1984. Although legal changes has given women equal access to jobs and opportunities for promotions, inequalities still persist today.
Two people with the same job, the same qualifications, the same experience, and the same performance. The one person gets paid $100,000 a year,
and one person gets paid $82,000 a year. The difference?
One is a man,
and one is a woman.
In Australia, the national gender pay gap is 18.8%, meaning women are paid 82 cents to the dollar compared with men.
This is the largest the pay gap has been since the Australian Bureau of Statistics began recording the data in 1994.
If current trends continue, it will be 70 years before men and women are paid equally.
Why is there a gender pay gap?
Australia is amongst the most occupationally segregated Western countries in the world, with men and women working in different industries and jobs.
Feminists refer to this perception of appropriate female-orientated occupations as pink-collar work. That is, low-paid but highly emotional-bearing jobs, such as nursing, teaching, and other caring roles.
Also contributing is a lack of women in senior positions and a lack of part-time or flexible senior roles available to women.
Women more often require part-time and flexible roles because they still undertake most of the more traditional roles of childcare and housework. This idea is referred to as the double shift.
And finally, both direct and indirect forms of gender-based discrimination.
Let's also get thought bubbleistic. So let's say you feel you've been discriminated against at work by your employer. What can you do, at least under federal law? First, you have to be in a protected class as defined by the law, which means that you will need to show the discrimination was based on your race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Now, sometimes this will be easy to prove, like in a case where your employer says, "I'd give you a promotion if you weren't black," or, "Gee, I'm sorry to let you go, but you know you're a woman and we can't have too many women working here." This happens almost never because most people aren't that bigoted or that stupid. But it does happen, and if you have this kind of statement and witnesses to back it up, you have a pretty good chance of winning. The more common cases are those where nobody who is a member of a minority group or a woman gets promoted, or members of those groups are disproportionately fired. Say if the company has 90 white employees and 10 black employees, and when they lay off 10% of the workforce, 9 black workers are fired and only 1 white one is. This is called a disparate impact, and if this happens, new court procedures kick in. If you are in a protected class and feel that you are a victim of disparate impact discrimination, and you can show that your employer's actions has the effect of exclusion, then the burden of proof, which normally is with the party making the complaint, you in this case, shifts to your employer, who then has to prove that his actions were caused by a business necessity. I can't imagine there would be a business necessity for firing 90% of your black workforce. Harassment in the workplace. This might not seem like discrimination right away, but if you think of discrimination as negative treatment based on one's membership in a specific group, then it starts to make sense. It makes even more sense when you read about some of the things that women have had to go through at work that have led to discrimination cases. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but it's pretty horrible. You should know that there are 2 types of sexual harassment at work: quid pro quo and hostile workplace environment. Quid pro quo harassment is when an employer promises or withholds workplace benefits like promotions in exchange for sexual favors. This is obviously wrong and terrible. Hostile work environment is a bit trickier because it can be the result of other employees and not necessarily an employer. But courts have ruled that it's an employer's responsibility to ensure that the workplace is friendly to all employees.
Let's face it, you're biased. But don't get defensive. We're built to be biased. Does your brain think these squares are different shades of gray? Think again. Your brain took this shadow into account and made assumptions that this square was darker, based on the checkerboard pattern. This natural tendency gives us shortcuts to make sense of our world. The trouble is, these shortcuts, when applied to people, can result in bias. So, how do we avoid unconscious bias to build a better society? Behavioral design offers a new solution to collapse gender inequality in our lifetime. What if we could make it easier for our biased minds to get things right by changing our organizations? For example, in the 1970s, major US orchestras made an ingenious discovery. Adding a simple curtain to the audition process allowed them to listen to the music rather than judge musicians based on their looks. Not only did they acquire better talent, but the fraction of female musicians grew by more than 30 percentage points. Simple solutions like this can also debias our workplace. Simply removing the names on resumes gets a lot of the bias out of the way and allows access to the full talent pool of candidates. And here's some low-hanging fruit. Research has shown comparing candidates to each other, rather than the imaginary stereotypical applicant, calibrates our minds to the best, rather than those who we think look the part. Behavioral designs like these have doubled the fraction of women on the boards of the UK's largest companies in a very short amount of time. Seeing women in leadership, whether in business or politics, changes what people think is possible for their daughters and themselves. In 1993, India mandated 1/3 of seats be reserved for women to serve as elected leaders at the local level. This not only offered new insights into public policy, but also encouraged women to speak up in community meetings. And seeing women work made it more likely for girls in the community to stay in school, marry later, and delay having their first child. Kind of gives weight to the phrase, seeing is believing. Many organizations, including Harvard, have taken this to heart by hanging up more portraits of female role models. Here's what you can do today. Try changing who we look up to on our walls. So, yes, it's time to face it. We're biased, but we can design around it. We have the research and tools to cheaply and quickly redesign how we work, learn, and live. It's not only the right thing, it's the smart thing to do. And now it's up to you.